boring at some point. So let's move on to the next topic. But yeah, hope that made sense. um, yeah. The So this one is the one which we'll be most aware with. Like, oh yeah, no. Let's see. Let's see. Notice how the experience section is a nightmare of blue. It's because it's such a complicated system. You could have premium. You could have a premium specific model in your game. Like you have something that rewards premium in your game. But if you do it in a way that disincentivizes non-paying players, that could backfire. And so that's why these are all blue, because you can't really solve for them until you test them. You can have theories, you can notice patterns and make them a little bit more toothpaste color. But that is not the same. You need to test these. That's why I'm telling developers, test your game from the second you can test it. I've made a few weeks ago. I made a game in a week. A few months before that, I'd made a game in 2 weeks. And in my opinion, those games are me at my best. They aren't the best games I've made in terms of pure technical achievements, but they are the most resourceful, most responsible, and arguably the most I don't know if I ever said it, but efficient. Yeah. For example, the data we'll be going over today in Power BI will be from my game that I made in a week. And that game, I'm not working on it right now, but if I wanted to, it has a lot more room for growth and improvement, and I was able to make it in a week than some games I spent years on. Because if you test early, you realize you'll find these little hidden daggers, these little things that mess stuff up. Like for example, my game Mortal Metal that I mentioned way back at the beginning. That failed because the map was too big. Because people couldn't find each other. Because there was too much lag. All these things that I could have checked for at the beginning. And I thought I did. But because I didn't test it, because the game wasn't fun from day one. Unlike Bad Business, who was in my class, actually. They were in my developer class. And I watched them make their game in 2 weeks. Literally. They have inspired a lot of my... a lot of that kind of stuff. Just like make a game in 2 weeks. Because they showed you could make a fun game in 2 weeks. And people were playing their game. They had the entire core experience loop done in 2 weeks. And they were one of the most successful games. They were the most successful original IP of that season. Yeah, no. Test early. Make something simple. Make something ugly. But make it fun. And if it's not fun, either trash it was only a week or two of work. Or improve it. And that's up to you. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, I appreciate you showing up at all. It's not too often that you can get an audience of anyone, to show for an analytics thing. Like at my college analytics class, it had about as many people in it as we currently do now, and those people paid thousands of dollars to be there. So, yeah, I don't know how everyone in the games industry in the games course didn't take that class, but it's one of the most valuable ones I took. Anyway. Focusing on this, though, aggressive testing and iteration, as Rathson put it. That's how you're going to solve this area. All the other yellow areas, the yellow and toothpaste areas, you don't got to test for that. Like, you probably should track it to make sure you didn't mess anything up. But, like, if you don't mess anything up, you can reliably know that things are going well. And if something is going wrong, you can track it down like you're debugging code. Because this is logical. This is code. This is a system. And the blues, that is why we need analytics. And that is going to power the rest of the presentation in many ways. So a quality game to me is not really something you can define, I guess. It's about fun. It's about whether or not a player would rather spend their time in this game versus not. There will be games which are enjoyable, agreed upon in general by everyone to be enjoyable. And there will be games which have a very niche audience who love it. My game's one of those. Except maybe replace love with like with an asterisk. And yeah, so it's like the fact that a like-dislike ratio exists for games, where people can play the same game and have different opinions, means you will never truly have a quality game. Um, but in that way, you also will always have a quality game. So long as someone likes it, so long as you like it, you have a quality game. And the thing is, though, when people say, should I make a quality game, they aren't talking about the heart value, the enjoyment of it. They're talking about success. They're talking about other people agreeing it's good. And from that level, yeah, you could solve for that. Like, it's pretty predictable. And you can improve upon stuff. You can, look at every field that makes up a game. The asset quality, the mechanics, the balance, the social systems in it. Like, those are all fairly documented in how to make them better. And it's fairly shown that when you make them better, that aspect of the experience is generally improved for users. Like, imagine, say, a Grand Theft Auto 5 versus Grand Theft Auto 4. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a much more beautiful game, and it has a large map, a very large map. And I believe it just had so many new features. Now, it doesn't have necessarily the same mod support the other one did, which is a separate area, but in general, most people agree that GTA 5 is the best Grand Theft Auto game to have ever been made. And possibly the last one, depending on when GTA 6 ever comes out. GTA 5 took every quality of their game which was good and amplified it, and made it amazing, and people loved it for it, because by and large, quality is pretty agreed upon for those smaller areas. People know when a game looks good. People know when music hurts their ears. People know when the control scheme is confusing. And when people know this, they'll react to it. And when they react to it, you can test for that. And when you test for that, well, that's just called analytics. But yeah, so quality games through analytics. The experience system. This is, we're not going to go too deep into this because really it's more to show you it exists. But yeah, so we have, probably the most interesting part is this one, I'd say overlooked factor, but it's overlooked possibly more by me than other people, because I've made this mistake so many times. I keep making my maps too big. Every time. The last 3 games I've made, map was too big. I don't know. I don't know why I keep doing it. I know it. Every time the map gets a little bit smaller. It's not working though. Okay. Yeah. You just hire a map builder. Okay, but anyway, test your maps. Don't polish something until you've tested it. Speaking from last 3 games of experience where I did that. But yeah. No, and I think analytics is key. I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will realize analytics is not something devs can do. It's something devs almost have to do, because it is the most responsible and powerful way to improve your game. And we'll get more into that later. For now, this is this thing right here. This is the concurrent players increases the amount of players per server, which obviously is influenced by the server cap, which you can set. From there, you can set the map size. You can make the map bigger or smaller. If you don't bake it all in before you release it because you spent thousands on a map and you can't remove it. Okay. Yeah, player density. That's players per server. That's the amount of players divided by the size of the map. It's not too complicated. But what you may not realize is that one of the biggest reasons that a large map fails is because they don't talk as much. Now, this could be a few reasons. For one, it could be a very simple psychological phenomenon, is when you see someone, you're more likely to talk to them. Like, if you're in the same room with someone, you're going to talk to them more often than someone on your phone. Like, technically, you could text the other person whenever you want, but you don't. You don't even, sometimes you'll get texts and just not respond. You can't do that when you're in the same room with someone. If someone says hello to you and you're standing right next to them, you can't pretend like you didn't see it. Like, I'm a fairly antisocial gamer. I don't talk to people very often. But when someone says hello to me and we're alone in the server together, right next to each other, I say hello back, even though I would have never done so otherwise. That's the beauty of player density in a server. And also, there's the fact that when you're closer to another player, you more likely have something to do with them. Like there's more like they more likely have to be considered. If you're playing a game, a team-based battle game, and there are people right next to you saying, "We're about to attack on three. 1, 2, 3, go!" Like that's obviously that's talking more. You have to coordinate with them. You have to say, "Hey, you want to do this thing with me?" You can say like, "Oh, sorry, man." Like you can. All these interactions happen. It reminds me. Like, do you know what the number one indicator of falling in love with someone is? It's proximity. Every other thing you've ever heard about, like, wow, what makes a marriage work? It's proximity. Like, every human relationship, you need to have access to the person. It's why we're all not best friends with Will Smith. It's like, no, we have to be near the person. And that proximity, you can control that proximity in game development. And yeah, so that's a pretty big thing, I'd say, because messaging rate, it not only helps general retention, which I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty sure I didn't draw an arrow to this because, like, talking to people can make the game more fun and directly influence retention. I didn't draw the arrow because I couldn't find a way to connect it to that without going all the way around. Because, no, I could. Guess I just didn't. I'll refine it. You guys just know. Messaging, players talking more often, that's a more social game. And that's a social loop. Arguably, you could say it plugs into this if this is viewed through the lens of social. It's fine. That's the problem with these blue areas. They're up for interpretation. I could say that if you want to tell me I am wrong on all this blue stuff, go for it. I'm with you. You could be right. Let's test it to find out. But you could be right. You're not right about the yellow. You're not right about the toothpaste. Because that's something that we can check right now and know who's right. And I've checked, and so long as no one's seen anything different, I think we can safely assume this is the reality of things. But yeah, messaging rate. Messaging rate is super helpful because, especially with onboarding, because if someone has a question, they'll talk to people. Like they'll be like, "Hey, how do I do this?" And then they'll break the ice. In fact, I'd encourage not over onboarding a game because A, that bore the players to tears, and B, having players talk is okay. Like that helps a bit. Like there's a balance to be found, sure, but don't immediately rule out, "Oh no, not 100% of the users are getting through here." Like you might see that improvement in one area is hurting another. And that could be messaging rates. So keep an eye on messaging rates and when you're dealing with your game. That's why I put it here, because I think it's pretty important, especially for Roblox. I'd say messaging rate stuff is very specifically a Roblox thing to consider, because not all games are social. Not all games need a full server. Many games are solo players, especially indie games, because networking is hard. My goodness, that is a loud motorcycle. Oh, why are those things even legal? It's like, who's benefiting from that? Okay. It's like the population densities in the 10 blocks around me is higher than the entire population of Indiana. Okay, but yeah, back to focusing on this. And actually, now that I think about it, it's probably the population of Indianapolis, because New York and Indiana are the same population. Okay, anyway, back to work. Definitely tutorials. Onboarding is its own fun little thing that probably deserves its own talk, but by like a UX expert, not me. I've never been that good at onboarding. I've been good at onboarding when someone tells me I have an onboarding problem, how should I solve it? I'm not naturally good at it. I need testers to tell me, hey, I don't get this. Or better yet, the data. Don't trust your testers. If I can achieve one thing from this, it's that your testers can't be trusted. But yeah, so from there, let's move on to the... but actually this explains the concept a bit more. You don't always have to... You can solve this problem in one of two ways. Increase the map size, or increase the amount of servers, amount of players in your server. If you're stuck with a map this size, make a bigger server. If you're stuck with a map this size and the density is too high, because that can also be bad, but more in the sense that it directly impacts this rather than overall influences. And also, make sure you have chat channels and stuff working in case you have too big of a server, because If it's like, you guys ever try to chat in like the Roblox Discord server, you cannot have a conversation there. That's why Discord works, because they have those smaller channels for discussions. So make a convenient way to talk to people near you. Maybe restrict chat to only certain areas if your map's too big. I've seen a few games do have like in-game like texting for like chatting to people far away, which I think is pretty cool, and I might give it a try in my next game. But still, yeah, this is the social of influence. Make sure that density is where you need it to be. From there, yeah, the core loop.